Picture this. A massive, blockbuster game hyped to the moon for nearly a decade crashes so incredibly hard on day one that it gets literally yanked right off digital shelves. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking one of the absolute wildest rides in gaming history, the disastrous launch, the immense fallout, and the surprising resurrection of CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077. We're going to break down the anatomy of a massive industry mistake, diving into the timelines and the direct reports from the front lines to figure out exactly what went wrong and how they somehow clawed their way back.
To really grasp how crazy this got, we have to start with the moment the entire gaming industry just stopped. On December 17, 2020, barely a week after launch, Sony issued a completely unprecedented statement. They announced they were striving to ensure customer satisfaction, offering full refunds, and completely removing Cyberpunk 2077 from the PlayStation Store until further notice. For a high-profile AAA release, this was practically unheard of. A game of this sheer scale had never been evicted like this before. It sent shockwaves through the entire entertainment landscape.
And the reason that move was so shocking comes down to one massive number: 8 million. That's how many pre-orders the game had rocked up across PC and consoles before it even saw the light of day. The whiplash was staggering. We're talking about a studio going from 8 million hyped pre-orders, fueled by years of slick cinematic trailers and celebrity endorsements, straight into a flood of refund requests, unplayable frame rates, and literal nausea warnings overnight.
Section 1. Anatomy of the Mistake.
So how on earth did we go from astronomical hype to that unprecedented digital eviction? It really boils down to prioritizing massive marketing buzz over a realistic development cycle. Development actually kicked off way back around 2011 and 2012. We're talking about a grueling 9-year cycle. Then, in 2018, a 48-minute gameplay trailer completely set the internet on fire, promising this insanely dense, interactive world. But heading into 2020, the cracks were getting impossible to hide. The game was delayed 3 separate times. It was a desperate, crunch-filled scramble to meet unrealistic deadlines, which ultimately culminated in that disastrous December 10th release.
And when you realize there was a staggering $330 million on the line, the corporate pressure to deliver becomes this unstoppable force. That massive budget, an estimated 1.2 billion Polish zloty spent on development and marketing, created a scenario where the game absolutely had to ship, even if it simply wasn't ready, especially for older hardware like the base PS4 and Xbox One. The financial momentum was a runaway train and nobody could hit the brakes.
Section 2. The financial and fan fallout.
When launch day finally hit, the backlash was immediate, severe, and devastating for both the devoted fan base and the developers. You can see the broken trust crystal clear when you compare it to the studio's previous masterpiece. Back in 2015, CD Projekt Red launched The Witcher 3 to universal acclaim. In its first month, it saw about 7,000 Steam reviews, with only 7% being negative. Now look at Cyberpunk, a jaw-dropping 300,000 first-month reviews, with a massive 20% of them negative. The sheer volume of players and the intense vitriol were on a completely different planet.
And, we aren't just talking about a few glitchy NPCs here. The game was technically melting down with unplayable frame rates on those older consoles. But far worse, it posed actual health risks. Certain visual sequences were actually inducing epileptic seizures, which forced the studio to scramble and issue health warnings. Meanwhile, on the corporate side, furious shareholders immediately slapped the company with a federal securities class action lawsuit. They were getting hit from every possible angle.
Unsurprisingly, the financial reaction was brutal. The studio ended up losing roughly 65% of its market value in the direct aftermath of the launch. For a company that had previously seen a 570% surge in value after The Witcher 3, this plunge was catastrophic. It basically erased years of steady financial growth in a matter of days.
Financial researchers actually tracked this crisis in real time by matching up user sentiment from reviews with a metric called a Z-score, which basically predicts a company's probability of bankruptcy. They found a terrifying correlation. Right at that December release, user sentiment falls off a cliff, and in perfect tandem, the firm's financial survival metrics dive right along with it. It proves definitively that in the modern gaming landscape, user sentiment and broken trust directly impact a company's very survival.
Section 3. The Long Road to Redemption.
But here's where the story takes a massive turn. It doesn't end in disaster. The studio was faced with a massive choice: cut their losses and run, or fix it. They chose to fix it through a grueling, multi-year recovery plan. Step 1 was pure damage control, sweeping apologies and offering full refunds to anyone who asked.
Step 2 meant pushing out a staggering 13 major patches over the next year just to stabilize the game and stop the crashing. Step 3, though, is the crucial one, a massive internal restructuring they called Red 2.0, shifting their entire development model so this would never happen again. And finally, Step 4 was the successful release of dedicated next-gen console versions in 2022, finally tapping into the hardware the game was truly built for.
The real turning point, though, where the game finally became what was promised all those years ago, was the huge 2.0 update. This wasn't just squashing bugs. It was a total overhaul of the core mechanics from the ground up. They dropped in a dynamic new police chase system, moved armor stats completely off clothing and into your character's cyberware implants, completely revamped the perk trees, and made enemies dynamically scale to your level. It effectively transformed the title from a deeply flawed mess into a premier action RPG.
And honestly, that relentless grind paid off. 3 whole years after that disastrous launch, Cyberpunk 2077 was nominated for and won Best Ongoing Game at the Game Awards. It was the industry officially recognizing that the redemption arc was complete. Through sheer perseverance, they finally delivered the experience fans had dreamed of playing back in 2020.
Section 4. Lessons from the launch.
But this whole saga is way bigger than just one studio's comeback award. It fundamentally shifted how consumers evaluate the entire gaming industry. As one user in the patient gamer community perfectly put it, the biggest takeaway here is on us, the players. This launch exposed the immense danger of a pre-order culture fueled by highly polished, cinematic teasers rather than actual, stable gameplay. Buying a game blindly on day one has become a massive gamble, and it's one that players are far less willing to take now.
Taking a step back, the broader industry takeaways are pretty stark. The whole day one patch trend, that's a massive red flag now. If a game needs a giant overhaul patch the second you buy it, it probably wasn't ready to be sold. We've learned the hard way that no amount of marketing hype can replace a realistic development cycle. And as the data proved, broken consumer trust isn't just bad PR, it has severe, lasting financial consequences. Today, user sentiment is directly tied to corporate survival.
So it leaves us with a pretty heavy question to consider. CD Projekt Red managed to pull out of their nosedive, but it cost them hundreds of millions of dollars and years of goodwill. Will developers truly prioritize stability and transparency going forward, or is it only a matter of time before we see another Icarus flight? Keep that in the back of your mind the next time you see a flashy cinematic trailer for a game that doesn't come out for another 3 years. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you some solid insight into the crazy data and the human stories behind the Cyberpunk saga.